So welcome everybody to Customizing Success, Creating Thriving Teams with Cloverleaf. Now, if you were on our last webinar where we really talked about boosting team engagement, we really took all of your feedback to create today's webinar. We wanted to try to get as many of the things that we could connect together that you gave in your feedback to really put today's webinar together. So my name is Stephanie Licata, and I am the Senior Learning Strategist with Cloverleaf. I've been using Cloverleaf since 2019 with teams and organizations of all sizes and all industries. I also am part of the Cloverleaf team and help to support their clients and customers maximize the use of Cloverleaf. And I'm super excited today because I am not going to be the only person talking, because I don't know about you, but I'm tired of hearing my voice. So Jason, why don't you introduce yourself, my co-host here, who's also going to be co-facilitating.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. So I'm Jason. I've been with Cloverleaf since September of 2022, and I have recently moved over into kind of the customer experience world. So um, all things education, support, any kind of like training materials. So if this isn't your first webinar, you've probably seen me on here before. I love connecting and explaining the tool and how you can get the most out of it. And I'm super excited to kind of level up my co-hosting abilities and have a little speaking role today.
Awesome. Excellent. So let's get started with our agenda. So what we're going to do is we want to share with you some features you want to be using. One is brand new. It's awesome. Jason's going to share it. One is kind of new, but I'm obsessed with it. Jason's also going to share it. And so we'll share with you some features you want to be using. Then we're going to really spotlight on the team roles grid. So many people ask us a lot of questions of, well, what is the team roles grid in Cloverleaf? What does it really reflect? And how do I understand it? And for those of you who are not sure what I'm talking about this right here, the team roles. We're going to dive deep into this, and Jason is a little bit of an expert in this. So he's going to share with you a little bit about the team roles grid. And I'll pop in to share maybe some times when you might want to use this to really help your team develop. Then a lot of you in your feedback in our last webinar, you asked about things on the team dashboard to understand some of the assessments more. So I'm going to do a little bit of an assessment and team dashboard deep dive. I'm going to kind of speak to some of the assessments, what they measure, when you might want to use them, how it can help you in your team development. So I'm really going to be deep into the team dashboard because I know when you kind of look at a team dashboard, it's got so much stuff on it. It can be sometimes overwhelming. And I'm going to really speak to some of that. And, you really don't have to be an expert in every assessment to leverage this. There's so much value inside the app of Cloverleaf within our help center that you can also jump off onto. And if you're just joining us also, we're not going to be giving out a resource today because we're mostly going to be in the tool. But when we do publish the recording for this webinar, and we'll make sure it gets out to you, we're going to put links to articles that are relevant to some of the topics that we're covering. So we're going to be doing that. And then we'll talk about, again, understanding the different assessments and what they measure, and then what scenarios to leverage which assessments. And then we'll have some questions, feedback. When I'm speaking, Jason's going to be in the chat. When Jason's speaking, I'm going to be in the chat. So feel free to throw any questions that are in there, and I'll either answer them directly or maybe we'll discuss them live. So please feel free. Don't hold on to something if you want to pop it in the chat. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and Jason is going to share his screen to be able to work with us.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Steph. So I'm going to guide you all through a couple of things. So the first stop we'll make is just some new features, some features you should be using. Something that is brand new, as Stephanie mentioned, is an update to our calendar insights integration. I pulled up some internal meetings I have coming up next week to use as an example here, but some of you are probably noticing there is now a dashboard that you can jump into for those folks that you're meeting with that have their Cloverleaf profiles connected. So I'm going to scroll down and we're going to jump into our monthly data insights meeting. And then just kind of as a side note, you can view more than just today's meetings in your calendar integration by clicking these arrows here and kind of going into the future. So as I'm preparing for Monday's update or Monday's meeting, didn't mean to collapse that. I'm going to go ahead and jump into this team dashboard that was created showing all of the members on this meeting attendee list here. And what this does is it gives you just a little dashboard here of how people might or how we all kind of balance each other out, how we all show up on the team dashboard, and some kind of insights that you might be able to glean here. So I will use a couple of folks as an example here. Most of these people I work with pretty regularly, but I'll pick on John here from our data team. He and I interact a lot. We do a lot of chatting here, but I don't really talk to him on like a normal cadence or anything like that. So what I want to do is I'll find him in this thinking style comparison that gets spun up here for this little dashboard. And maybe I'd like to learn more about how John communicates, maybe some conflict triggers for him. And just so that way, if I'm bringing something up, I'm going to know a little bit more about John and how to speak to him a little bit more effectively. So we can see here, I know John to be very laid back. He's very go with the flow. Love that about him. Any kind of material that I'm sharing, it looks like he prefers to discuss decisions beforehand. So I'm going to give him all of the data he needs or all of the evidence or whatever he might need to make a decision. He works a lot in our data department. So if I'm trying to get a new report spun up, I want to know or he wants to know why we need this report, what's the use for it, can anybody else benefit from a report like this? So he does a lot with our reporting. He's always in the spreadsheets and in the data. So just a quick example of this and kind of a good use on how to interact with somebody here, and just other different ways that I will get into will definitely apply to this dashboard as well. Um, the other thing I will bring up here, if I jump back into my dashboard here real quick, is the reflections tool. I think Stephanie will agree that this is a really good feature here. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback around it, but just a quick nudge here or a quick plug for this tool. So as you are viewing coaching tips, not just for yourself, but maybe for somebody else, you can now reflect on these tips. So if I look at mine real quick, reflect on how shifting conversations to tasks with certain teammates might preserve your energy. So this reflection is based directly on this coaching tip. Each coaching tip gets its own reflection, and there are thousands of these. So it's really impressive to see this tool out here. But in kind of thinking about this, just to give you some context, you may find energy at times drained by some team members' lack of compassion. Consider focusing on task-based discussions with those teammates rather than people problems. So focus on the tasks. You know, if there's other elements to my workday that are not really necessary to completing a goal or a task, that's probably where I will shift my focus. So I think just to kind of keep it vague in general for timing purposes, you can go through these. You'll get a reflection about the person you got a tip on. So Lane over in our product team is a product wizard here. Reflect on a recent decision and how explaining it to Lane might spark new ideas. So this again is pulling from her coaching tip, but you can reflect and then also save and share tips. So if I wanted to share this tip with Lane, it's pretty easy to do that as well. But we recommend jumping in here, I know you probably can't do it every day, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, just spend 5 minutes with yourself, think about, the prompt here, and then maybe just jot some thoughts down about, whether it's a tip about yourself or a coaching or a, teammate you got coaching on. But that all lives here in your dashboard, and, what we'll jump into next, kind of broadens
Jason,
yeah.
before you move on, I just want to make sure, just for folks that just joined us. So one of the things that Jason demonstrated was the team dashboard that can come up for your meeting. So a way that you can also just like help people know this is a thing. So if you have a team and your calendars are integrated, it
Mm,
might be good on a team meeting to be like, hey, did you know that Cloverleaf has this new feature where you can actually plan ahead and look at everybody that is on a meeting? So you may be on a meeting with people from multiple teams that you're not on. And so previously you really didn't get to see the mix of those people because these maybe these 8 people are not actually a team, they're part of different teams.
yeah.
So this is something like as Cloverleaf has new things that come out, you want to bring that to your team. Hey, look at this. If your calendar isn't integrated, make sure you integrate your calendar. What can you do to plan ahead, right? So Jason showed you that you can actually look at tomorrow's 3 p.m. meeting and see who's all on that meeting. So as you're preparing notes, agenda, preparing to get buy-in from somebody, you can really look at what's the dynamic on this team, which is something that previously was not available to you. You'd have to go to each and every individual person's profile. Now you can see the sort of mixed group of people that you're about to have a conversation with. So share this with your teams, share this with your leaders, right? Give them that sort of strategy of being able to plan and customize for meetings. We've talked a lot about planning and customizing one-on-one conversations. Now you can really plan and customize your approach to a meeting, which might affect your materials, your language, what you share with people, right? If you've got a bunch of people that are high C's coming in on that meeting, you want to make sure you have a lot of data and homework and materials to back up whatever you're asking for, right? So I'll make sure that I share that with you when we talk about debriefing team dashboards, but this is something you really just want to be able to share with people. Right.
Yeah.
Jason, do you know how many days in advance it goes out? If you want to go
About
back
a
to,
it goes out about a week, so, I could go up to next Wednesday.
okay, good. Excellent. All right, great. Okay.
Alright. So thank you for that. So the next thing we'll jump into here, as we kind of talk about teams, I will call out two really cool features here around the team dashboard that you get, and how you can kind of combine them to really get maximum collaboration and productivity. So. We're going to focus on this middle column here. We're going to take a look at the energy rhythm feature called best time of day. We're also going to take a look at the team roles grid. So working from the top down, we have this team roles grid. So based on your assessment results from the behavioral assessments, so DISC, 16 types Enneagram, and the VIA strengths assessment, VIA, we kind of take all of that aggregate data and we will place you into one or more of these roles that we think that you would prefer to play when collaborating on a team to maybe get a goal across the finish line or something like that. So just to kind of briefly go over the different roles that you have and how I like to approach them. You have your innovators and your resourcers here. And kind of as a side note, as you probably know, this whole dashboard is super interactive. So if you want to know how Cloverleaf is defining a resourcer, for example, we're going to see here that they're a networker. They go outside the team to bring in ideas or resourcers. They're also pretty familiar with maybe your shared drive, or they know whose strengths to tap into when maybe lining up the rest of these roles. So um, what we'll do is at the beginning of the project, we will take a look at our innovators and our resourcers. So your innovators are your brainstormers, your idea generators. They're super creative. They're likely thinking of solutions to problems. They're really good at kind of getting that ball rolling. They're then going to go and find a resourcer who says, I've got a great solution to this problem. who can you find or who can we collaborate with next to kind of get this goal to the finish line, get this product released, get this feature updated, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and then from there, you kind of get to the middle of the project here. So you have your coordinators, your drivers, your analytical monitors, and your teammates who soothe over any conflict and things like that. So they're kind of in the meat of the project, putting things together, putting all the pieces in place. And then when you get a maybe like a rough draft or a first pass at something, you turn to your implementer to kind of kick the tires around, take the thing for a test drive, and then collect all that feedback. Once you've collected all that feedback and you're getting ready to release it, you want to make sure that you get a finisher involved. They're your perfectionists. They're your second pair of eyes, your proofreaders. They're going to go over and check through all the details and make sure that we're not missing anything or typos or things like that are taken care of. What that gives you is this grid. And just for reminder's sake, I am basing this team roles grid off of that dashboard that was generated for the meeting I'm about to go into on Monday. So a couple of things to note as we look at the grid, you're probably seeing check marks and exclamation points next to some of the roles. So what this is telling you, and the visual probably colors it in a little bit better, is that if you have an innovator with 3 green circles, which I will explain, you get a check. But if you're missing somebody with those 3 green circles, this is just a visual reminder to let you know there's somebody in here who we'll say it doesn't would prefer not to do this all day or is kind of in a less than favorable is kind of like your first choice here. So this isn't to say that nobody can't be a monitor or anything like that. This is just saying we're all capable adults. We can do many amazing things. But this exclamation point is just letting you know there's probably somebody in here who's going to be a little drained when doing this activity. So it's good to kind of let you know probably balance your day out doing something that gives you some energy in your workday if you have to do something like being in the spreadsheets all day. So looking at monitor for an example here. So getting into that, we have these 3 green circles next to everybody's profile picture here. So John, again, his tank is full. He's got 3 green circles next to his profile picture. That tells me that he would prefer to innovate. He would likely be energized innovating all day if I let him go and do that. And then as we get lower in that tank here, again, not to say that we cannot do it. I know myself, I know I would probably a little burned out trying to think of solutions and brainstorming all day. And then so this grid is just kind of a great setup to where this gives you that more supplemental information going into that meeting to where let's pick one that Heidi's our only driver here. So driver, task focused, and has a need to achieve or get results. Heidi is very task focused. She probably won't do it all day. She'll probably get a little drained doing that. But she is the only one that showed up in all of the aggregate results of our assessments and has kind of shown, that she would less than prefer or maybe situational for her to kind of be a driver. But the rest of us kind of didn't score high or not. I don't want to say score like it's, a competition or anything, but our results didn't generate enough data to kind of put us into that driver role. And then so looking at that, scoping out this team, we can see that we're kind of balanced. We've got enough to kind of maybe whatever goal we set for ourselves at the end of this meeting, we have the pieces to achieve this goal here. We might need to tap into Heidi's resourcer network here to kind of maybe see if we can pull in an additional driver here or the monitor as well. But that's a little bit about the team roles grid. We'll share more information about the definitions and all of that after this webinar ends, but just to kind of give you a hopefully a little bit of a better understanding of how this feature works.
Mhm.
And then we can actually use this in tandem with the energy rhythm feature here that you get. So energy rhythm answers a question you probably already know the answer to. Are you a morning, afternoon, or evening person? We define these as starters, pacers, and anchors respectively. And what this does is gives you this best time of day to do some kind of task with the people on this team dashboard. So let's say I want to give some feedback, and you can see here that if we look at the entire module, we have how peak is defined and how recovery is defined. So let me find one with just one here. Okay. So we will go with collaborating for this example, as it's a little visually easier to explain here. So most of us here are hitting our recovery time around 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. here. And what this best time of day feature is telling you is that this recovery time is best for creating tasks, researching, or generating ideas. This is kind of um, we would relate collaborating to recovery here, to where if I'm generating some tasks and I want to collaborate with some other folks on this particular team dashboard, I know I'm probably going to want to do this, I'll say after lunch or kind of towards the end of the day here, where I'll probably get a little bit more of that collaborating juice than from another time in the day. So just to give you an example of how that works, you can see if we're in our peak here, is there one just for peak?
Go to
Um,
data analysis. If you go to data analysis, oh, or your problem solving.
yeah. So you can see here, everybody's hitting their in their peak here. I'll say before lunch, just for general purposes here, but peak is the best time for intense, focused tasks that require analytical and strategic brain power. So if I'm trying to problem solve, um, that coffee's kicking in at 9 a.m. and probably wearing off around lunchtime. That's the best time for me and probably the rest of these folks to get in here and really kind of put pencil to paper here and solve some problems. So there's lots of great ways that you can use this in tandem with the team roles grid. So if you're trying to get into some of the data here, I know that there's a problem in this spreadsheet and I need someone's help to solve it. Great. Before lunch, we're going to get all of us together and kind of pour through the data on this spreadsheet and see if we can figure out where the problem is and how we can attempt to fix it here. So great way to use both of these together here that you'll learn more about as this webinar goes on. But I just wanted to give you all an overview of these two modules and how you can kind of use them together.
Right. Thank you so much, Jason. And, some other context for when to use team roles. So Jason was sharing the team dashboard for this meeting that he's having. But I want you to consider that this team roles grid can be a really great place to start an interactive conversation for how are we doing, right? What are those areas where we need help? What are those areas where we have to do some best practices, develop some best practices because we don't have an implementer, right? What do we have to do, right? On our team, what are our gaps? What are our strengths? And we have too many people clustered in one area. So this can be a really great resource for some team goal setting when a team is looking forward to maybe setting OKRs for a quarter. It can really look at what's that development area for our team that we can set together. It can also be a great fodder for a one-on-one conversation with a leader and a manager, right? To say, hey, are there any areas that maybe you're not strong in, or you don't have those three dots where you have that full tank where you do want to develop something you do want to learn more about. So you can set individual goals.
And I
Um,
have a one-to-one with Mindy next week, so I
yeah,
can show that one-to-one team dashboard and how something like that might actually look.
excellent. Right. And so now Mindy can say, hey, it seems like, that innovator resource or that generator part of the project is not really where you thrive, right? And so how can we help you thrive more as a coordinator, right? More as a monitor, more as a finisher, right? And so it can also help with some of that collaborative role design. Um, so right now, David, I'm going to answer your question. So it's not factoring in time zones. What it is saying is that in the afternoon for that person where they are in that time zone, that's a good time for them. So if I need Jason to do some brainstorming, I am going, now Jason and I happen to be in the same time zone. I'm going to be thinking about, I have to do that math right now, right? So I know that, we've gotten a lot of requests to help that. But so the rhythm chart is just saying for that person where they are in the afternoon is when they're going to be in their peak or their recovery, right? Jeff, great question. And we are ever evolving our features, but we can also pass that information along in terms of being able to schedule a meeting in the future and leverage that data to help determine, who to bring to that meeting and also when to have it. So I think that's a
I
great
love that.
suggestion. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can pass that on. Can you capture that?
Yeah, will
That
do.
comment. That's awesome, Jeff. Thank you for that feedback. We love user feedback, so we really appreciate it. So we know there are some limitations to this right now, but it can really be, the best that you can do, right? And the information that you do have can be super helpful and super relevant. So I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to take a deeper dive into the team dashboard itself. Many of you asked in our last webinar, I want to know more about the specific assessments. When do I use them? So I'm going to do a little bit of a dashboard tour and a little bit of a high level sort of overview of some of the assessments and what they measure. Now, some of you may have more comfortability with some of these assessments. Now, because of time, I'm going to focus on some core assessments and the ones that that I'm able to speak to in this time period, but we can also touch on some others as we go forward. So I'm going to just also make sure that you know that there is these 3 columns for a reason. So the left-hand column are the behavioral insights, right? So you've got your behavioral big 3, which is 16 types, DISC, and Enneagram. So, however, they're not all the same. They don't all measuring the same thing. So, for example, 16 types was designed in the field of psychology. It was designed around personal preferences, right? So it's answering the question, is someone drawing energy from being with people or being alone, right? Is someone, when they're perceiving information, are they focusing more on facts and details? Are they focusing more on patterns and big picture? Are they a sensor or are they more intuitive, right? So are they looking for data? Are they looking for facts to connect them? Or are they looking for dynamics, right? Or patterns, right? Is someone making a decision based on more of their thinking or their feeling, right? Are they going to lean into decision making with logic? Or are they going to lean into it with more of the heart, right? Based on values or concern for others' well-being, right? And then how do people like to actually manage their lives and work? Are they going to manage more towards perceiving, which is a more fluid approach? Or are they going to manage more towards judging, which is a more structured approach? Now, many teams that I work with, I'll see this distribution similar, right? We've usually got some more J's than we do P's. And what I always say to teams when you're looking at a team that's got a little bit more than 50% J's is something to be aware of, right? With 16 types. So here's the thing with J's. I'm a J as well. We prefer structure, but we also prefer our own structure, right? So sometimes that can cause a little friction. And something that can also happen with a team that's sort of heavier in J is that sometimes they'll get transactional and process oriented before they've actually allowed time for innovation or brainstorming, right? The J wants to get it on a plan, get it in a spreadsheet, right? The J wants to know what's the next step, except sometimes you haven't expanded with creativity enough, right? So you might want to call on that innovator or resourcer, right? To be sort of leveraging a brainstorming conversation as you sort of, before you're doing a strategic plan, before you're putting pen to paper, we don't use paper anymore, before you put something in a file, right? So it's just something to be aware of. So as you can look at a team's disbursement and you can understand a little bit about each of these functions, you can understand the balances. Oh, we have more feelers than thinkers, or we have more feelers than thinkers here. You don't need to be a 16 types expert to say this group is going to be making decisions, probably more from the heart. What's the upside of that? What can be the downside of that? The downside of that is that Jason's over here going, wait a minute, we have some information that we also have to consider, right? And the feelers might be wanting to make everybody happy, right? So we could even just look at this and even just consume this content and understand a little bit about how some of these people are on our teams that we're working on our perception, our functioning, thinking, making decisions, and how they are organizing their life. I've showed this before on webinars, but this is the secret gem of the 16 types. It's the cognitive function pair, because those two middle letters actually talk to how someone mentally consumes information and then how they organize it to make a decision. And so if you actually even look and you click on all of these quadrants, you can see, if you read this, you can see how I can actually start a conversation if I've got to create partnership with someone. So if I am going to start to create partnership with an ST, right, they want logic right away. They're practical. They want to know the details up front. So I'm going to tell them exactly what we're going to talk about, right? Whereas the NF is focused more on connection, authenticity, empowerment, purpose. So I might say, oh, I'm so inspired by the work that you're doing. I want to see if we can come eye to eye with some of this so that we can work better together, right? Whereas the ST, I'm going to say, hey, let's look at this data together so we can see where maybe we're missing the mark, right? I'm going to be more practical, more upfront, right? So just by looking at this, this is about how do we learn to interact with each other? How do we balance some of the, the percentages of the weight, where the weight lies. So for example, a team that's going to be high on extroversion, we want to make sure that the extroverts are not all sucking all the air out of the room by dominating each other. And also we want to ask our introverts, what do you think? Right? Because they might be just de-energized or demotivated by a long meeting or a long conversation. I'm going to ask my introvert 3 days later what they think, because they now have re-energized after that 3-hour meeting, and maybe they have some new ideas, right? So we're looking at this to understand how people individually function. What is their preference? Now, when we move to DISC is actually one of the only assessments that was designed specifically, one of the earlier assessments that was designed specifically for the workplace. It was designed in the early emerging field of industrial organizational psychology, and it was designed to look at how do people show up when they are in groups at work, right? How do they show up? What are they going to lean in towards, right? How do they operate? What are going to be some of their strengths on a team that operates together, right? And now we can kind of see, right, the scores of each of these things, right? So people that are high in dominance are drivers. They're going to drive to completion. They're motivated by goal accomplishment. They're confident. They're moving fast. Let's go, right? People that are high in influence, they are, again, natural connectors. They put relationship as one of their core activities. They're enthusiastic. They can kind of move fast. There's always a downside. Sometimes they're so focused on the connection and the relationship that they're missing some of the details, right? But now we have our S's, our steady people. They're the consistent ones. They're the rocks. They're the people that hold the team together. They're people that might be a little bit averse to change or new systems and processes, but they're the person that's always going to make sure you have the notes from the meeting that you missed, right? Or they're going to be that support through that change, right? And then we have our C's, which are your quality assurance people, the people that are going to make sure that if there is any T not crossed or I not dotted, they're going to catch it. We want our C's to be that last pair of eyes before something goes out the door, right? So now, as I'm trying to understand maybe a new team and how they work together, I want to know the scores of each of these, right? If I've got a team that's low in D, right? Again, I don't need to be a DISC expert. I have a team that's low in D, right? A team that's low in driving to completion. So I've got to ask myself, well, what do we need to do as a team to make sure we stay on track, to make sure we stay connected to our goals? What's a best practice we have to implement, right? So I can just look at this and say, how do we leverage this gap, right? So now I think I'm the highest D on the team. Yeah, so I have a 75 in driver, right? So how do we make sure I don't get overloaded with all the D stuff, right? That I'm always the driver, right? How do we make sure that that D energy is shared? How do we leverage our influence energy, right? We've got this high influence on this team. How do we leverage that, right? How do we make sure that we are creating positive relationships across functions, right? How do I also make sure that as a team that you're working on, if we're lower in I, what do we have to do to be able to make sure that we're creating more collaborative environments with other teams, that we're creating partnerships outside of our team, right? So when the score is lower and we have less of that, are there things that we have to do, right, to maybe elevate that strength? Right? We're pretty even keel in this S and this C, right? Who do I need to go to, right? I'm going to go to Jason when I really want that exacting feedback, when I want that person who's going to notice those details, I'm going to go to Jason, right? And maybe Jason might come to me if it's like, hey, how do I build a relationship with this person, right? Can you share your experience? Jason might come to me if he sees my scores in that direction, right? And so this can really be used to understand how a team is operating, how a team can develop best practices to operate more efficiently if they are lower in certain areas, right? So it's a lot of operational effectiveness that I'll often use I'll often use DISC for, to understand how are we operating, how are we moving, how can we lean on each other, how can we accentuate our complementary strengths on the team. And this last behavioral assessment is Enneagram. And Enneagram is really about what core values are driving people's behaviors. And then based on their individual Enneagram type, they're also placed in an Enneagram triad. And an Enneagram triad tends to think about decision making in a similar way. So for example, and you can click on this, right? How is a gut triad going to kind of go into decision making? They may be moving a little bit quickly. They may be sort of listening to their gut and kind of moving and saying, hey, I'm inspired by this. I'm mission driven. I want to make this decision because I really see the value in it. Whereas someone in the head, right, they're going to be a little bit more like, hey, wait a minute, can we think about this? Can we analyze this information to make sure we're taking the right step, to make sure that we're covering all our bases? And the heart triad is going to say, well, how does this decision that we're about to make affect certain people, right? So it's great to have representation from all three triads in Enneagram when you're making decisions. So sometimes when I'm working with larger teams and I'm putting together subgroups, I'll go in and I will actually create a little subgroup to make sure I have representation from the gut, the head, and the heart, if that's possible, right? And what's great is if I'm coming into a meeting and I know I need to get buy-in from Mindy, I'm going to make sure that the information I share has a personal narrative to it, that I'm not just sharing data. I am going to share data, but I'm also going to use that data to create a narrative that's relevant so that Mindy can feel connected to why we may need to make a certain decision. And all of these assessments, again, have such rich information inside the app. And if you ever want to go off the app and go deeper, you can just highlight that question mark and it's going to bring you to a deeper dive into that assessment, right? If you really want to go down that road of understanding more, but there's so much rich information on here. Now, Jason talked about roles and team rhythms and when we would use these. I want to draw your attention to one of our strengths assessments, to VIA Strengths. Many of you might know of Dr. Martin Seligman. He's the father of positive psychology. And this assessment is based on his work and also the work of a partner of his who looked at teams and said, what are the strengths that if they're all present, makes a team most effective and balanced, right? And so one of the ways we can look at this, and just so you know how to read this, whenever there's a number in front of a strength, it means that 4 people in our team have the strength of kindness in their top 5 strengths, right? And if you look down here, there is some inactive strengths, and we can even see, right, this bravery, perseverance, zest, this is similar to that dominance feature. So this is actually, we have a little bit of a lower dominance score. And this is that sort of take initiative, right? That move forward to the goal type energy. So we have to constantly look at, when do we get slowed down, right? When do we need to focus more on tying back to goals, right? So we can look at, as a team, we can look at, what are the active strengths? How are we using them? What are the inactive strengths? How do we develop strategy to fill those gaps? Now, I know I'm giving you a lot of information, but I'm just trying to help you understand a little bit about how we can glean information about a team, right? You can just take one of these assessments, right, one day and start a discussion. Hey, does everyone understand the triads, right? And again, you don't need to be an Enneagram expert. Look at all this content. Here's what it means to be in the gut triad. Here are the strengths of that gut triad. Here are the blind spots. It's a great, I've done this before, this exercise. I'll say, hey, everybody go to their Enneagram triad blind spot, right? And say one thing that you are going to stop doing to operate in your blind spot, right? What's one thing you're going to do to not stay stuck in your blind spot, right? So you can use these as conversation starters. You can use these as icebreakers in a meeting or a training. Again, you can use these if someone's saying, hey, I have to make, I'm having trouble collaborating with these three people. Great, go look at their Enneagram triads and just understand a little bit more about how they approach decision making, right? And understand a little bit more about some of the ways to approach them, because in every one of these sections, there's an if not section. So if you're not part of the gut triad, it's going to tell you exactly how you might want to approach people in the gut triad, right? So again, there's so much information right on this dashboard that you don't have to go take a course in Enneagram, right, to understand some of this, right? So I've done that left side. We've done this middle side with his sort of strengths and roles here. This right side is around culture, right? We also have this, our thinking styles comparison here, which we can also change the assessment, which with we're comparing people, we can change the people as well. We can use ourselves. We can use different people who are not ourselves, right? And instinctive drives is another assessment that talks about what are the different aspects of your team that you are either driven to use, avoiding using, right? Or there's a diverse spread, right? So for example, this team is wired to avoid improvising. So what does that mean? When you have less people below this line of neutrality, it will say this team is avoiding that instinctive drive to improvise. Whereas the people above this line, it's more instinctive for them to improvise, right? And so there is actual information directly in the app that says, well, what do we need to watch for, right? What are some strategies to attack that, right? How do we account for, how does this impact our team, right? This team is driven to authenticate, right? They're driven to that. They're driven to authenticate. They're driven to get the job done by taking ownership. You've got more of the people above this line of neutrality and not, right?
Yes, Linda Mahoney, 1:00.
So you've got that information here on your dashboard.
Your insurance?
No.
So somebody just muted themselves. So I don't know if you want yeah, okay. Unmuted themselves. Okay. So again, these are cultural trends within your team that you're either wired to use, avoid, or if they're diverse, this means that there is a even spread with this instinctive drive, right? Again, there's a wonderful collection of videos on instinctive drive. So if you click on this little question mark, you can dive deeper into it as well to see some cultural trends. Culture Pulse is a really fabulous spectrum, which shares different cultural dynamics on a team and shows where on that spectrum that people lie. So I often share with people the management philosophy spectrum, because basically there's two different styles of management, right, that this measures. So people that manage more towards performance, or people that like kind of set the goal, like, go ahead, I'm here if you need me, let me know. People that manage more towards support, right, are more people that are kind of going to do more check-ins, going to, hey, let me know if you need me to come in with you. They're going to be a little bit more hands-on, roll up their sleeves. Now, it doesn't mean that they're less supportive than the performance person. The performance person might just be giving their direct reports more autonomy. So it's really, really interesting to look at what's the spectrum of management philosophies on a given team, and then what does that mean for the people that they manage. So it's the same with all of these different aspects of culture, right? We're obviously a very approachable team, right? So for example, if you had a sales team, you'd want to make sure everybody was over to the left, right? Because you want to make sure those people are approachable, that they're natural in conversation, right? And so we can see that here. Now, if you do have people that go more towards guarded, right? It's a great coaching conversation, right? For a manager and a person on their team, what's the impact of that, right? Maybe that's becoming an issue, right? And what does that mean? And how can you be more open to conversation and collaboration, right? Motivating values is similar. It will talk about the values that are motivating people's behavior and what's important to them. Similar to the way that Enneagram measures core values and how those core values sort of impact how they see the world, right? So it'll measure them on a spectrum. So for example, our team is very altruistic. We're very in service. We are the customer success team. So it makes sense that we're on this altruistic side where we are really trying to support people through relationship and want to make sure everybody's happy, has what they need, has what they need about understanding how to leverage Cloverleaf. So again, it's really what's about what our values are, what's important to us, and then how that shows up in the workplace. And again, you can just use some of these as conversation starter. So it's as simple as, what do you notice if you're a director and you have a bunch of managers? Hey, let's discuss this. What do you notice about where you fall on the management philosophy spectrum? And how do you customize that to work with your diverse team, right? It's a conversation starter, right? It's a reflection point, right? The more that we can invite people to reflect on how they show up, on how they impact others, on how their behavior impacts others, the more we create self-aware individuals and self-aware teams, right? And ultimately, that's the entire mission of Cloverleaf, right? Is that every team is a thriving team, and that this knowledge helps us to more deeply understand how we can better work together. And the assessments are just kind of the behind the scenes that's feeding that, right? Because we know we have all these wonderful features on our dashboard that can help teams better understand, how do I prepare for this meeting? How do I prepare for this conversation? How do I win? How do I create a win-win atmosphere with these three individuals, right? And so we know that teaming and that really coming together, especially if your teams are remote or they're new or they're changing, right? I'm sure you could find yourself in any one of those areas, right? We know that we can give people support, right? And that it's not a guessing game, that it's not, oh, I wish I had known that about this person before I went into that conversation. So this is about helping your teams use Cloverleaf in a proactive way to increase the quality of those interactions.